Hello everyone! In this video we will add the ability to put on and take off equipment by right-clicking on them. So now we can only drag our weapon on different slots, but we cannot de-equip them or equip them with right mouse button. So let's implement such logic. First, let's open our widget blueprint for equipment slot. It's called VB equipment slot. Navigate to a graph, and here we're gonna add a new override of a function. Let's override a function called on mouse button down. Unfortunately, Epix didn't give us an event dispatcher with right mouse click event, so we have to handle it manually. Here we're gonna get mouse event and check if is mouse button down. And we're gonna select right mouse button. Add B, add branch here, and we're gonna check it. If false, we're gonna return, just duplicate this return node. We're gonna return unhandled. If true, then we're gonna return handled. And before calling this true, we're gonna add a new function here and call it on right mouse button. And let's call it from our function on mouse button down. We're gonna call it only if branch returns true. Now let's open our function on right mouse button and add the print here. We're gonna print hello every time when we click on a slot with the right mouse. Okay, everything is working fine, so now we have to implement a function of de-equipping. Here, let's create a new event dispatcher and call it on de-equip item. This dispatcher will have an input of type slot as inventory slot. Here we're gonna first check in our function whether this slot has something equipped in it, because we may have an empty slot and we don't need to do anything if it is empty. So we're gonna get inventory item, break it here, and check if amount not equal to 0. If it is not equal to 0, then we're gonna call our on the equip item dispatcher. If false, we are doing nothing. So we're calling and we have to provide an input slot and connect inventory item here. Compile and save. Now let's open our VB equipment widget. Open graph. I have already tried to implement the equipment earlier. So what we're gonna do here, let open your pre-construct. Previously it looked like this. Let's delete other events here. Let's add a sequence node with holding S keyboard button and left clicking on an empty space. Connect Zen 0 execution pin to this logic, and on Zen 1 we're gonna bind events for the equipping. We're gonna get all widgets, just copy them from here, get your left hand, right hand, copy them also, and move them here. We're gonna bind them on one event, not like here on 3 different. We're gonna use one event for them. So let's bind event on the equip item. Connect Zen 1 here and connect every other slot to a target. Foot, chest, helmet, legs, left weapon, right weapon. Now let's create an event. Call create event function. Select function and in drop down menu select create matching function. We will have a generated function. Let's rename it and call it on the equip slot. From this part we have to get our inventory system. Oh no. From this part we have to use another event dispatcher and tell our inventory that something was de-equipped. So let's create a new event dispatcher here in this widget. Let's call it event on de-equipped slot. It will have an input named slot of type as inventory slot. And in this function we're gonna call this dispatcher. Connect everything, slot to slot, execution pin to execution pin. Now let's open our VB inventory. Here it is. Open a graph. Select your VB equipment on variables and it will have a new event in events called event on the equipped slot. Click on plus. It will create us an event. Now we have to get our inventory system and call some function. First, let's create that function in our inventory system. Let's open it. VPC inventory system. And let's create a new function here called Deequip item. Move it into equipment section. And this function will receive an input slot of type as, as inventory slot. Here we're gonna break our slot, hide every pin except unique ID, and we're gonna check what slot we're gonna de-equip. We're gonna get our current helmet slot, break it, and check if its ID is equal to the equipped ID. Let's check if they are equal exactly. Add a branch. If true, then we're de-equipping helmet. If false, we have to do the same. We have to check if this ID is equal to, for example, chest armor. Let's promote this UI to a local variable and call it deequip ID. We're gonna get this deequip ID. Here, get chest, break it, and check if chest armor ID is equal to deequip ID. Add a branch and connect false from a previous to this one. Next, just duplicating this, like this for example. Instead of chest armor, we're gonna use legs. Duplicate, connect false, duplicate. Instead of legs, we're gonna use gloves. The same, connect, duplicate. Instead of gloves, we're gonna use foot. Again. Instead of foot, we're gonna use right hand weapon and the same for a left hand weapon. Left hand weapon. Compile and save. Well, now, if we are de-equipping helmet, then we're gonna get our helmet slot and call add item. We're gonna add this item back to inventory. Let's break the slot here. Plug ID to ID, amount to amount. Hide unconnected pins. and copy this instead of this slot, paste it here. So repeat the same process, but with other slots. Well, that's not needed. I'm sorry. We can do it like this. We can just get a slot that we're de-equipping, like get slot, break it, and plug ID and amount. And we can just repeat it for every slot or connect a true of each branch here. But before this, we have to remove an item from a helmet slot or chest slot. So we're gonna set helmet slot here to nothing, or set chest armor slot to nothing. The same for legs. The same for gloves, foot, right hand weapon, and left hand weapon. And now we can connect every execution pin to the said item. So, how does this function works? First, we're just finding a slot that we are trying to de-equip because we don't know it from a slot info. We're checking if the equipment slot is equal to our current helmet, and if it is, then we are setting equipped helmet to none and adding an item that has been stored in a helmet back to inventory like this. And we are doing the same for every slot. So now let's open our VB inventory. Here in inventory system, let's call the equip item plug slot connect execution pin. Now we can test it. Right click. Okay, it's not removed because let's open our VB equipment slot. Here, after call on the equip item, we have to nullify this inventory item. Let's just set it to none. In function on right mouse button, setting it to none and calling update. Here's how it works, but what if I want to equip them with the right mouse button? Now, we have to implement almost the same logic, but for another slot. Not for equipment slot, but for VB inventory. Let's open our VB inventory slot, open graph, open mouse, and we already have on mouse button down here. Here we are checking for drag. Let's add branch here right after detect drag if pressed. And we're gonna check is mouse button down. We are doing this in on mouse button down function of our VB inventory slot. Connect to a branch. If false, we're returning for a result for a drag, and we're gonna select a button. Right mouse button. Connect an input. This is gonna be our mouse event from an input of on mouse button down. And if true, then we're gonna call a function like on right mouse button again. Let's call it here on right mouse button. And we're gonna duplicate return node and call handled. Well, on right mouse button, we're gonna do all the same. Let's create a new dispatcher and call it on, maybe not on equip item. Let's call it on right mouse button, because maybe on future we will need a logic to right click on every item in inventory, not only on equipment. So let's call it event on right mouse button. Add an input. Let's call it slot inventory slot and item. I don't think that we need item, by the way, but let's use it. So on right mouse button, we're gonna check. Well, do we need to check something? No. I think in our mouse button, we already have a check whether an equipment type is not none. So this function will be called only for equipment right now. So this is fine. Here we're just gonna call event on right mouse button. We're gonna plug slot into slot, item into item. Compile, save. Now let's open our VB inventory again. This widget. Select our VB. No, we're creating them manually. Open your function update with inventory. And here we are creating these slots. Create VB inventory slot widget. Here we're also gonna bind this event. Call bind event on right mouse button. Here we're gonna create an event, select function, and create a matching function. Call it on right mouse button. Well, let's open our inventory system, create a new function, or not a function, by the way. Let's create an event, and let's call it on clicked on right mouse button on item. Here we will have two inputs. First is slot, second is item as inventory item. Well, now let's call this function from our VB inventory. We're gonna get inventory system and call on right mouse button item on item. Connect slot, connect item. Compile, save. Well, now where is open our VPC inventory system, and we have to add some logic. Well, we're gonna break our slot, or not. We're gonna break our item and check its equipment type. We're gonna get equipment type and switch on it. Switch on equipment type. Hide other ins. Well, if we right clicked on slot helmet, then we're gonna call function called equip armor and use this slot. We're gonna use the same function for chest, leg, boots, and gloves. But for weapons, we have to check. If left-hand weapon slot is already has equipped weapon, then this right click should be equipped on the right hand weapon, if right hand weapon is empty slot. If both slots has some items, then we have to equip it only to the left. So first we have to check. We're gonna get, let me check where is in my, which one of them is left and which one of them is right? This is right. Well, right hand weapon is main, so let's open inventory system. And first we're gonna check if right hand weapon slot is empty. We're gonna get it, break it, and check if amount is equal to 0. Hide unconnected pins, add a branch. Well, if right hand weapon slot is empty, so if we have it true, we're gonna call equip R hand weapon and plug slot. False. If false, we're gonna check if left hand weapon slot is empty. Get it, get left hand weapon slot, break it, leave only amount, check if it is equal to 0, add a branch, and if it is equal to 0, then we're equipping our weapon to a left hand slot again. In other case, we're gonna equip it to the right hand weapon and it will replace currently existing weapon in the right hand. So that's it for this logic. I think that it should work. Let's check it. Well, it is, but the problem here is that our equipment slot is not updated. This inventory item is not updated. Let's open our VB inventory widget, open a graph, and we have a function called update with inventory, like this. And we are updating our widget with only array of items in inventory, but not with a slots of equipment. So this function should also no, let's create a new function called update with equipment slots. Here we're gonna get our VB equipment, check what function does it have. It doesn't have any update functions. And our equipment slot has an inventory item. Well, let's open our VB equipment, this widget, here in the graph, add a new function. Let's call it update with equipped items. Okay, select a function and let's add an input here. Helmet, chest, legs, arms, or how we have called it, gloves, foot, L hand, and R hand. Here we're gonna get one by one, we're gonna get from variables our VB chest armor, and set, not just set, if we will set nothing will happen. No, maybe we will use a set. So we're gonna get chest armor and set item. Set inventory item, chest. Let's do it in a sequence. Chest is gonna be a second. Duplicate this part. First is helmet. So get VB helmet slot. Next is legs. So get VB legs slot. Next is well, like, and don't forget to connect input pins with setter pins. Next is gloves. Let's connect them first and get Weeby gloves. And 4 is foot. Weeby foot here. Next, left hand weapon. Get Weeby left hand weapon. And finally, right hand weapon. Connect right hand weapon slot and select widget for right hand weapon. And for each of them, we gonna call update. So we're gonna call update function. Or we can even do it like this. Connect every setter execution pin to an update. And we're gonna call this function for helmet slot, chest ammo. Oh, I connected it incorrectly. I'm gonna connect it to a... Oh, I can't. Well, not good. So, like this. Weeby gloves, Weeby foot, left hand, right hand. So now we have update with equipment items function. Let's open our Weeby inventory back. And here we have update with equipment slots function. We're gonna get our Weeby equipment widget from variables and call update with equipped items. And we have to provide helmet, chest, legs, gloves, foot, left hand and right hand slots. We have an inventory system here, we can just get it and call get helmet slot connected to helmet. And the same for chest, legs and so on. Now, after connecting every pin, then we have to call this function from somewhere. Let's open our main HUD, not a main HUD widget. Let's open our inventory system and we have to tell our widget when it should update slots. We already have an event dispatcher called onInventoryUpdated. Let's call it again. Let's call it onEquipArmor. So open function equip. Okay, we already call an inventory updated on equip armor on for right hand. Well, everything is called by the way, but we didn't call it on the equip. So on the equip item, we're just using add item that is calling this function, so we don't need to change anything. Let's open our main HUD widget. This widget with canvas panel, that one that has an event update inventory. And in update inventory function, we are calling only update with inventory. We're gonna also get our Weeby inventory and call update equipment slots right after that, so that equipment slots will be updated. Now let's check it. Will it work? Now it works. Let's add one more axe and see how it is equipped. So now everything works fine with the right mouse button, but let's fix one more issue. Open Weeby equipment slot, and here we on right mouse button we have set our inventory item to nothing, to null, and updated it here in a widget. This logic should not happen in widget. It's not, widget is not responsible for such logic. We already implemented and needed functions. We already implemented an update. and our inventory system calls an update when it's needed. So you can just delete this part and it still will work. Well, one more issue that we have to fix is that when we are closing an inventory, then our mouse cursor is still visible, but we will not fix it yet. We will fix it a little bit later. We will create a full system for handling, for managing user interface widgets, and we will have a widget that needs a mouse cursor to be shown there. So thanks for watching this video. Hope it will help someone. And just to show a result of our work again, we have such an inventory. We can, previously we only were able to drag items to our equipment slots, but now we can de-equip them with the right mouse button click, and also we can equip them with right mouse button.